Okay, and we are live.
Thank you, Troy. I'm going to open the meeting of the West Ada School Board on January 19, 2021 at 5 p.m. As custom, we all start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm going to ask everybody on the phone or on the meeting to mute their mics, and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance out loud from our offices or at home. All right. Well, welcome to the West Ada School Board special meeting. Clerk Newbold, do we have any agenda changes or additional items?
Chairwoman Johnson, trustees, Superintendent Reynolds, I have added all the patron comments and any additional emails that I have received to the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Newbold. We have up on the screen in front of us our agenda for today, and I wanted to just do a quick summary of walking through the agenda and summary of where we're going to go for tonight for decision points. So first of all, the two main items on our agenda are to appoint a trustee to fill the vacant seat in Zone 4, and then also to have action on our boundary committee recommendations. We have a great pool of applicants, diverse backgrounds, and they're going to finish out a 3-year term for this zone seat. The first thing we have to do tonight is we have to set the selection process. How are we going to, as a board, narrow down the large candidate pool to 8 applicants? What process will we go through to do that? The second is that once we decide on the process, we're going to actually use it to select the 8 candidates. And we'll need a motion or an action to select those 8 candidates to move forward to the interview round. Once that happens, we'll admit those folks that are selected into the meeting. Right now, they're in a waiting room. And then we will interview those 8 candidates, and we have 8 questions, and we'll walk through that process when we get to that point. I want to make it very clear the selection process, how we get to the 8, we have to decide as a board. But the criteria for which each individual trustee selects their top 8 and also in the end selects their motion is all individual to the board. This process is the standard process we've used in the past as far as each individual trustee getting to make their decision based on the criteria. We've used a written interview process. We have an applicant that every candidate went through. We have a resume from every candidate. And then each trustee has different feedback from different zone representation or personal communications that they also can use in that criteria. So we do not have a specific set of like job interview criteria for a trustee. That's all individual to the board to decide that, and each trustee gets to make that criteria on their own. So with that in mind, we start with the first item on our agenda, which is to discuss the process we'll use to move candidates on to the verbal interview. Troy, if you can, just to start us off, fellow board members, I put together an option for the board to review and decide or make feedback on to decide if we want to use this process to narrow down the 8 candidates. We've all had an opportunity to look at their information that they've made available to us. So this is the process, and let me walk through it because I want to be able to have you look at it, think about it, and ask some questions before we go into an action item on it. So using all of the information available to us, each trustee would select their top 8 candidates to move on to the verbal round. Having ran the numbers, if we don't put the candidates in some sort of rank order, we could be here a little while tonight. So the second process is that each trustee would rank order their top 8 candidates on level of importance to the trustee that the candidate move on to the verbal interview round. The ranking would be from 1 to 8, with 8 being the highest and 1 being the lowest rank. I want to make a note here that that rank only signifies the level of importance for which the trustee believes the candidate should move forward. That doesn't necessarily signify the overall support by the trustee for one of the candidates. It's just a selection ranking. We would have the trustees email their ranking to the clerk during agenda item C on our agenda. And then the clerk would tally the scores from all board members and display for the board only the total scores by applicant in rank order from highest to lowest. That information is information only. It's an aggregate scoring of the board, but the Board of Trustees must still make a motion in item D, action on a candidate, to move on to the verbal selection and select applicants that would move forward. So with that in mind, that ranking is there for information, but it's still up to individual board members to make a motion based on the 8, and we still have to select it based on an approved motion. So with that, I would open it up for any thoughts or questions on this proposed process. Any items of concern? Want to use this or not?
Chairman Johnson, this is Ed Kloppenstein.
Trustee Klopstein.
Thank you. I just had a quick question about, so just to make sure I understand. So 8 is the highest. So in other words, our top candidate would be number 8 and our lowest candidate would be number 1 within the top 8. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I should make a note here. I turned on my video. I forgot to do that at the beginning, but if anybody else wants to, they're more than welcome to. So. Are there any other questions? Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll move to agenda item B, which is action on the process to use to move candidates to the verbal interview. Do I have a motion?
Chairman Johnson, this is Trustee Kloppenstein.
Trustee Kloppenstein.
I move that we approve the process to move candidates to the verbal interview as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
This is Trustee Ozuna with the second.
Thank you. Chairman Kloppenstein with the motion and Trustee Ozuna with the second to move the process as presented forward for selecting the top 8 candidates. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And the chairman votes aye. The motion passes 4-0. That will move us on to discussion, our agenda item C, selecting the candidates to move forward for the verbal interview section. So I believe we're all clear on the process. So at this point, I will open up again discussion just for any clarifying questions. But if we don't have any, then we will take about a 10 to 15 minute pause here, and we'll ask each trustee to email their top 8 in rank order to both the clerk and Troy, so they can make a comparison and check all the math before and then they would come back to us and show us that top ranking. So let me open up first. Are there any other questions or discussion before we move into that path? All right, with that, Troy, I don't know if we would put us on a pause, and we'll ask each trustee to email their top 8 rankings to the clerk and yourself. You want to mute the mics or how you want us to do that?
I'll mute the mics for you, Trustee.
Okay, we'll take a 10 to 15 minute break. I'll let Troy or Sherry will let me know when they're ready to come back on. Oh, thank you. You'll let me know when
Microphones are back on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're back and we'll resume the meeting. Mr. Stevens and Clerk Newbold, would you please share the results of the trustee ranking? Thank you. So at this time, we're still in discussion item C. This is the ranking of the board. If there is no other discussion, then we'll move into agenda item D, which is the action of the board. Is there any other discussion before I move us to agenda item D? All right, seeing none, we'll move us to agenda item D. Troy, if you would leave the ranking up for, or put it back up once we get on so the board members can see it. I would ask Clerk Newbold, as Troy moves that ranking back up for us, is there any names on that list that are not in the waiting room right now?
I'm checking just a second.
Okay.
I don't have confirmation that Wendy was in, but she might have come in when I was not.
She is in now, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right, I will open it up for any motions.
This is Trustee Buffy.
Trustee Buffy.
I will make a motion that we move the top 8 applicants as listed on the screen to the verbal section of the interview.
Thank you, Trustee Buffy. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Motion made to move the top 8 applicants forward to the verbal interview round, made by Trustee Buffy and seconded by Trustee Kloppenstein. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, we will take a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 4-0, and we will move the top 8 candidates listed on the screen into the meeting, and we'll go through the explanation on the verbal interview round. Troy, I'm going to give you a second to admit everybody that is moving forward.
Thank you. Just a moment.
While you're doing that, I just want to take the time to say everybody who didn't move forward, I know they're maybe able to listen online. We appreciate all of the interest in this application process, and also we're very, very impressed with all of the candidate backgrounds and resumes.
So those are the scores that they gave.
Okay, so apparently we're missing Kimberly Brown. I'm trying to see if she's back on.
Okay. While you're doing that, Troy, I'd ask all of the applicants to please just mute your mic for now. We're going to make sure, see if we can get the last candidate who maybe dropped off to log in. Thank you.
Currently still missing Kimberly Brown, David Bailey, and Liza Long. I'll see if I can.
Troy, you can't hear me?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you.
Oh,
There you
okay.
are. Perfect. So Kimberly Brown and David Bailey are still missing then.
Okay. Troy, I noticed we had during when we were on pause for the ranking that people were getting we're dropping in and out, so they may have gotten kicked off. So we could take a break if we need to get a hold of them.
I'm going to attempt to reach out to them right now.
Thank you. Troy, I see Kimberly Brown.
Yep. Kimberly Brown just joined and still waiting for David Bailey.
Okay. Looks like we're getting videos in, so thank you guys all for sharing up your video. I think we're just waiting on one other applicant who maybe got kicked out. So.
Okay, looks like Mr. Bailey is able to join us now.
Thank you. Troy, okay, I see him here. All right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you all for your patience. We're going to enter in now to our agenda item D, which is interview of the candidates. And I want to walk you through this process. First of all, I appreciate you all turning on your cameras right away. That was one of the first steps, so you've got it done. We're going to have each candidate will be asked, we have 8 questions, and each candidate will be asked in random order a question first, and then we'll ask every candidate to answer that same question. So for example, if I were going to start, say Corey is our first person, I'll ask him question 1, and everybody will follow and answer that question. You get 2 minutes. And then when we go to question 2, the next person would be Kim, and Kim would get to answer first, and we'll go around in the order. In the same order. So everybody gets an opportunity to be the first person to answer one of the questions, but you will all answer all 8. Again, you have 2 minutes. Mr. Stevens will display on the screen for you the 2-minute timer so you know how long you have to finish up your answer. And then just for awareness purposes, the trustees cannot ask you any other questions or follow-up questions. Your answer in those 2 minutes is the answer that we will use for the evaluation criteria. So wanted to give you that heads up. With that, I guess maybe just to make sure everybody's on the same page, are there any questions from any of you? All right, I will potentially have us take a break in here because I do know sitting in a chair, this will take us about a couple hours. So we may take a break in the middle, just you'll leave your cameras on, but give everybody a chance to just stand up and shake their legs. So with that, trustees, is there any questions, or I will move forward unless I hear anything.
Just a real quick question. Can we just do a quick check to make sure we can hear everybody?
Yeah, we could do that. Why don't I just start? I'm going to start at the top of my screen. So Wendy, can you just turn on your mic and make sure we can hear you?
Hello.
Thank you. Corey?
I'm here if you can hear me.
We can hear you. Thank you. Ruben?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Thank you. David, we know we can hear you, so I won't do the sound check on you. Rusty?
I am here, yes.
Thank you. And David Bailey?
Hello, this is David Bailey.
Thank you, David. Kim?
Kimberly Ann, here I am.
Thank you. Miss Long, Liza?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thank you. And Ed, I won't do a sound check with you even though you're on my screen too. All right, with that, we're going to get started. And we're going to go in the same order as you saw on the screen, the order of applicants from top to bottom. That's our random order as well. So Corey, you will be the first person to start us off. And the first question is, why are you the best suited applicant for this appointment?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to meet with you for a few minutes today, and thanks for the work that the board has done during a very difficult year. Appreciate that. I think that probably my number one qualification comes as being a parent of kids in this district. I've seen them go through the past several years. I want to be able to give back to this district and to a community that has given our family a lot. And I believe that, my experience as a former educator, my experience working for major technology companies over the years, other life experiences dealing with both adults and youth, communicating through global programs that I run, I think gives me a perspective that is neither extreme. I think I come as a representative of, I'm a moderate representative of what I think the people in this community want. I don't come with any preconceived notions of how things should be run. I'm a team player. I very much believe in working together, communicating out, being consistent in decisions. and representing a community. So I think that, you know, as a moderate candidate here who has experience in education as well as the business world, I bring a perspective that is somewhat unique. And I'll end there.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Kim, or Kimberly Ann. You can tell me which one you prefer. Why are you the best suited applicant for this appointment?
Either is fine. Kim, Kimberly, Kimberly Ann, I'm flexible. I think I'm the best candidate because I come with a variety of perspectives with my experience with my 7 children. I've had all of them go through this district. I still have 3 there right now. Also, as an educator, my main goal has always been what's best for kids, not how fast can we do it or how much money do we have. It's how do we get to what's best for kids. And I think that also gives me insight into how to try and work together with people to make the best out of whatever situation we're in with whatever time or money or kids or staff we've got, what we can do to make the best of it. And with having so many children with different interests, I think I gain that perspective as well. I've had exposure to a lot of different activities and strengths and weaknesses, I guess, for my children. And then as a teacher, I've taught various levels from special ed all the way to the gifted and talented children. And I primarily taught math. And I think that's a subject where you have to take extra effort to try and make it interesting and fun and doable even in some cases. And so I think that gives me a can-do attitude. And I'm used to working with parents and teachers and people in the community. And I pretty much just want whatever's best for kids.
Thank you. David Bailey, you're up next. And the question again is, do you need me to repeat the question or are you good?
No, I'm fine. Thank
Okay.
you. So I think I'm the best suited applicant because I have a broad array of experience, and I have spent time on the Ada County Planning and Zoning Commission. I understand public information law. I know how to read the code and understand what the board's duties are and how to carry out those duties. I've had plenty of time on the other side of that as well as a land development engineer. We've done a lot of work and presented to boards and advised cities on a variety of things. So as far as public management area, I've done quite a bit in there. I've been on boards on writing code for the cities and on Ada County Highway District's capital improvement plan. So talked about a lot of capital improvement type issues and providing services for large groups in the public. I have experience managing large organizations otherwise. As far as my time in the Navy, I had over 150 staff members and thousands of students in a curriculum development for training center, and I acted as a nuclear engineering instructor and managed a variety of other courses in the Navy. I've had the training and the certification and curriculum development as well on that side, so I understand the duties that we need to carry out there. And I have not been an elementary school teacher, but or a high school teacher myself. But I do have 4 kids who are in the West Ada School District, ranging from my youngest stepdaughter, who's at Galileo, and my daughter, who is youngest daughter, who's a freshman at Eagle High. My son, who is a junior in the special needs program, he's autistic at Eagle High School. And my oldest daughter, who's a senior at Eagle High School. So I've been around the gamut, and I think as an outsider from the actual education system, that's helpful as well to help me be objective and carry out the laws that the state has put in place for the board.
Thank you. Liza, you're up next.
Thank you. I just first want to thank the board for your leadership through, I think, what we can all describe as interesting times. and also my fellow applicants. I was so excited and gratified to see how many people applied for this position, and it gives me just a lot of pleasure that I was able to have the chance to meet with all of you virtually today. I think I bring a somewhat different skill set to this position with my experience as a local, state, and national mental health advocate. So in my day job, I'm a college professor at the College of Western Idaho. I teach English and I manage the dual credit program, which is where I've interfaced largely with West Ada. I don't personally mentor any of the West Ada dual credit teachers because my children are all in the West Ada School District, but I do oversee the larger CWI English dual credit program. So with mental health, I feel like this is a particular concern, well, all the time for me, right? But right now, our students are really struggling. And we know that COVID has been a real challenge for them. And so I feel like this would be an opportunity for us. If I were on the board, that would be a priority for me. A second priority and a skill set that I bring is, again, that experience with going on. I know that's a goal for the district, to make sure that all of our students have a chance to go on and either pursue career and technical education or move on that path to college. And that's also something that I'm very passionate about. In terms of experience, I have board service. I was on the North Star Charter School Board several years ago, and I'm currently on the International Bipolar Foundation Board, where I'm the secretary. I've been the president of the National Alliance of Mental Illness Boise chapter. And I'm very passionate about community service. I'm also just very much a team player. I think I bring thoughtfulness to the position where I don't have a particular agenda. I just want to do what's best, listening to all the stakeholders and collaborating for student success. Thanks.
Thank you. Ruben, you're up next. Ruben, want to make sure your microphone is off of mute. We can't hear you yet.
Well, that's called internet lag, but that's what our kids have been facing for the last little while. So I'm excited to give you a few minutes of my time. You can hear me now, I'm sure. Thank you again. I am, like everyone else has said, just grateful to be here and excited to see the involvement and the participation that we have in the community for this important position. Why am I the best suited candidate? I broke it down to three factors. Number one, I would say, is my board experience. Not only have I served on the Seattle Children's Museum Board for a number of years in various positions, I've also served at the Boy Scouts of America in leadership positions on the council as well as on the district level. But as an attorney, unfortunately, I've had to deal with a lot of corporations. I work with business owners, and I work with advising nonprofits as well as everything from nonprofit entities all the way through to Fortune 50 companies. And I spend a lot of my time advising boards on not only their fiduciary duties, but also just tactically how to manage and run their operation in a way that makes sense. I think that the experience I bring, not only from serving on boards, but also advising, makes me the best candidate. It's hard for me to say best because there's really great people here, and I can see they're committed. Two other things that I want to add to the pile there might help distinguish me is, one is my skill set as an attorney. This isn't a skill set that allows me to take things to court or allows me to feel comfortable speaking with a bunch of people. What it does is it's actually trained my mind to view problems in a different way. Many times my job is not really to find the legal answer, but it's to find a way to work with a bunch of people that all want the same thing and to find a solution. And I think that my training has provided me with that skill set. In addition, I think that there are all problems kind of boil down to one thing, and it's leadership. And I think that being able to provide leadership and training on what leadership really means allows us to really separate certain candidates from the other. And that's what I'd like to give you guys tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. David Benetti.
Hello, everyone. I too was so impressed by all the candidates looking through all the questionnaires. So kudos to everybody. This is, I do think this is one place where the board is not going to go wrong no matter whom they choose. But I do think that I'm well suited for this role because I come from an entrepreneurial background. And as an entrepreneur, you try to view the world through a different lens. And so that's why I think that those one of three things that differentiates me. As an entrepreneur, you have to look at resources and make use of things when you don't have everything right at your fingertips. And so you have to come up with creative solutions and innovative solutions to problems. And so I think that's the first thing, that I can see things in just a different way because of that. Related to that, my second point is that I have a very open mind. I don't have any preconceived notions. I do like to take in all of the available information and then come to the best conclusion that you can. Now, that's not always going to make everybody happy, of course, but the essence of that is viewing as best as you can the information that you have and then making trade-offs accordingly. So that's number two. And then I think the third thing is my technology background, because I have had a background in high systems, very large scale, national scale, and that's not from an operational perspective, but it's really from a corporate governance perspective and an oversight perspective, which is really the main function of the board. So from that perspective, to be able to provide that high level perspective from a technology standpoint, a deep understanding of technology, I think differentiates me. So those three things: entrepreneur, viewing problems in a different lens; two, having a very open mind and no preconceived notions, so you can come up with creative solutions; and three, high technology background with large scale systems.
Thank you. Miss Wendy McKinney is up next.
Thank you. So as I approached my research into looking at this position and approaching it with an open mind, I did a lot of boots on the ground interviewing. That is what I do. I am a story gatherer and collector and sharer of stories. I love networking with people. There are no strangers in my life. My children are constantly embarrassed with the way I act in public. I just talk to everybody. So I am grateful for the 127 people that spoke to me since last Friday, a week ago. Some of you gave me a whole hour of your time. Oh my goodness. I love this community. I love being part of this community. I was born and raised in Honolulu. I was quite blonde at the time. And so as one of many minorities in Honolulu, I stood out a little more than others. And in doing so, I learned very quickly to look at a person's heart. You have to have integrity. You have to have a sense that the person that you're talking to is genuine and real, and they have your best interest at heart. And when you feel that way with a person and you make that connection, you're able to work together. You're able to be in a situation that may be uncomfortable, but when you're all working for the good of the children and the students, which we all want, we can have miracles happen. We can see peace come back into our community. We can see the healing balm of Gilead, if you will. It's a priceless gift, and it's something that we all need right now. And so I think if I were on the board making this decision, I would ask myself this question. We want to have a whole. We want to have the one person that we're missing to heal this community and move forward for the good of the students.
Thank you. And last for this question is Rusty.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to participate in this process. You know, as I listen to my colleagues here, it's too bad we can't expand the trustees by 8 people, because everybody brings a very special and unique perspective. Mine is public safety. I've just recently retired after 33 years in the fire service. The last 3, I was the fire chief here in Eagle. And that, coupled with over 10 years of an educator, an adjunct instructor at the community college level, has afforded me some skill sets that I think align with some of the challenges facing the district right now. You know, as I look at the pandemic, I was part of the public safety team here that initiated the initial response protocol for our folks and how they were going to respond out in the community when we had little information, much like the trustees had to do as they developed their plan. Growth. I dealt with growth here. We didn't have impact fees when I first came about, and I understand the struggles that school districts have with finding funding. And so we had to create a capital improvement plan and solicit legislative assistance to develop our impact fees to help pay for our growth. Strategic planning and benchmarking. You know, the fire service is based on identifying what your goals are, identifying what the standard is, and then benchmarking if you're achieving those. So I think my background in public safety, working closely with schools. I sat on the working group that adopted the Idaho Standard Command Response for schools that I know West Ada adopted. The fire service has a very unique bond with schools and children, and always has through our training programs and our public education with them. And so, you know, I believe as a public safety professional, I bring a perspective that will be different than my colleagues. And that, coupled with my background in planning for growth and pandemic responses, I believe I'm a good fit.
Thank you. We're going to move on to question 2, and Ms. Kimberly Ann Brown will be our first respondent, and we'll go through the order again with Mr. Corey Williamson being the last to answer this time around. So question number 2 is, during this pandemic, tensions have run high. Explain what has prepared you to deal with scrutiny from teachers, students, and parents. Ms. Brown, you'll be first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think my previous experience dealing with parents and students and outside influences helps me with this. I dealt for a few years in alternative education with the students that were kicked out of regular school districts, and they each had various different issues, and I had to deal with parents and law enforcement and special ed IEPs and you know, many different facets for each of these children to help them get successful in whatever ways they could, one little step at a time. And I think that's helped me. I was also the site administrator at some of these sites where there's more than one of these classes, and so we had to deal with neighbors and people that weren't particularly happy that our school was there, and try and make accommodations and work well with our kids, especially the ones close by. And so I think that, as well as being just a normal math teacher with everyone's complaints and belly aching about how hard math is and why we ask them to show their work, is just standard dealing with people and trying to help them be successful.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, you're up next.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been tough, and we've seen all the excitement that's gone around with the pandemic and information from all different directions, and not sure how to interpret it, and watch the board with interest during that time, both the school board and all of the mayors and all through that area. I do have quite a bit of experience in, let's say, controversial public involvement. As a land development engineer for about 27 years, I've been bringing land developments to a variety of areas around here. One you might remember recently in Boise, the Prominence Project on Hill Road, where the neighbors were up in arms on that. I was the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission when the temple was planned and approved in Meridian, with some significant controversy and a whole lot of people interested on both sides in what came out of that. I have been called at home. I have been chased out of meetings by people who said they were going to do nasty things, and I'm not very easily intimidated. I think I have a pretty good presence, but in addition to that, I'm also an excellent listener, and I can listen to someone no matter how loud their voice wants to get, and make sure that we understand what everybody's input is into a certain issue, and back that up with the idea that we have certain duties, regardless of the board, to take care of in association with the law and in responsibility for the kids, and that those are the decisions that we're going to make, and we're going to represent how we came to those decisions. So I think I'm particularly well suited to handle that dilemma, if you want to call it that.
Thank you. Next up is Liza Long.
Thank you. I have to start with the story. Once upon a time in 2012, for about 15 minutes, I was the most hated mother in America. And I had written an essay about one of my children who lives with mental illness, bipolar disorder. We didn't know that at the time; it was undiagnosed. And I often joke with people. We always see, we always see articles about what to do when your child is bullied, but what do you do when your child is the bully? So you can guess the conflict that even preceded this. But from that experience, I actually became incredibly interested in conflict and in fear, because the circumstances surrounding that were the tragic school shooting at Newtown. And I realized that people who were reaching out to me, sometimes even very angrily, were really coming from a place of fear and pain. And that if I could take myself out of the equation and stop and listen and really make sure that a person felt heard, our whole conversation could shift. And I've continued to use that skill with friends. I'm really fortunate. My Facebook feed has continued to show me people from both sides of our interesting political times. I've continued to maintain those friendships with people who voted for the candidate I supported and people who voted for a different candidate. And I think that comes down to conflict competence. So I became so interested in this problem of conflict and challenge and rapid change, which is really what we're going through right now. That in my doctoral program, I really focused on conflict competence and change management. And I did a doctorate in organizational leadership. And my thesis, I wanted to look at a particular conflict that continues to occur between mental health advocates who are parents and mental health advocates who are peers. And I realized that the exact thing I just said about listening and understanding was really what was going on with these two groups, that when we could create situations where actual authentic listening could occur, real conversation and dialogue was possible. And so I think that experience has shown me, given me a great deal of hope in our ability to solve these problems.
Thank you. Mr. Rubino, take us up next.
Trying my darndest to get my mic turned on this time. Thank you very much. So what has prepared me for scrutiny from parents and others? I believe as an attorney, my daily life is full of conflict and managing that conflict. I'd like to share one story. I was asked to manage the board meeting of a large nonprofit in Seattle. And there was a split in the body, and there were threats of lawsuits. There was tons of contention, and this was a women-only society, and they had asked me to come in and run their board meeting. And there were people there that had more money than I'd ever seen in my life, to be honest with you. And what it took, what did I find in that meeting? It's very similar to what everyone else has been saying about being heard. People need to know that they have a voice, that their concerns are being considered, and that their view may be valid. And I think that, as I look through my career and the experiences I have had in managing not only conflict but also making deals happen, that is the biggest piece of the puzzle when you talk about scrutiny and about complaining. You're never going to make everyone happy, and that's the beauty of leadership. And I think that one of the aspects that really has prepared me is my service in leadership positions, to understand that it is a burden of leadership, but also a blessing to be able to say, look, this was my fault. This was my decision, and I can stand by it because this is the analysis I went through. I think that when we're faced with scrutiny from parents, it's clear that they care for their kids, and we can all agree on that. And I think that finding ways to be a uniting front rather than a dividing front will help us be able to handle all the scrutiny that we can possibly face.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. David Benetti.
Yeah, the trick that I use most often is to make sure that I understand the other person's perspective by repeating it to them. So to literally say, I want to make certain that I understand you. So this is what I heard you say. And half of the time, people just talk past each other because they're so ready to say the thing that they want to say that they don't actually have the opportunity to really fully understand what that person is trying to tell you. And I think that the theme that everybody has brought up to this point is a theme that I agree with completely, which is that when people feel they're heard, it takes them down a notch. Now, they still may not be happy, and they still may not agree, and they still may be upset. And you have to own that. And you have to come to that, and you have to run towards that, like a fireman runs towards a fire, or a policeman runs towards conflict, or military runs towards a battle. You have to embrace that when you're going to be in this position. But the trick that I've learned is that if you can articulate what that person is actually telling you, and they say yes, they'll think more closely about what they're telling you. You'll think more closely about what they are telling you to listen to. And generally speaking, that tends to lower the conflict almost immediately in my mind.
Thank you. Ms. Wendy McKinney is up next.
All right. Well, you know, this is one of those things where if you talk to different people, they've had very different experiences when it comes to COVID, right? If you talk to some people, the heffalumps and the woozles have come into Dumbo's dream. If you talk to others, the zombies are approaching and, you know, we'll all die tomorrow. Excuse me. I think it's important to understand that the community is a community. And as we work together as a community, we can move forward in ways that are appropriate and timely. So one of the things that helps me is to have a balance. I am a professional volunteer. I have spent my whole life after graduating with a double degree in early childhood education and elementary ed in being a volunteer. And I have done it when I was in college and a friend of mine got attacked walking home from school. I jumped on the student advisory committee and we made sure that there were safe walkways and lights so that people were safe. When I was in some service positions, I have been able to get to know so many different people. And the people that you interact with are the ones that you understand. They're the ones that you care about. They're the ones that have a face that go with the problem. And so if you don't constrict your circles of influence, but rather enlarge them, you can not only present the ideas of others that you have gleaned, but you can also help the people that need you in the future. And so I bring to the table an increased trust. I look at the short, mid, and long-term aspects of these challenges.
Thank you. Mr. Rusty, I'm going to butcher your last name maybe, but Rusty Kofelt?
Oh, you nailed it. Yeah, you got it perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, my colleagues who have been speaking kind of nailed it on the head. You know, this is the world that I've lived in for the last 33 years. You know, when someone calls 911, tensions are high. And what I have found over those 33 years is that people want to be listened to, they want to be heard, and they want to feel like they have the opportunity to present their point of view. But more importantly than that is then they want to have you give them the why. People may not agree with the decision, but if they're given the why, they can live with it. You know, there's been times where we've had to keep people out of their homes. We've had to evacuate neighborhoods. We've had, you know, family tragedies. And at the end of the day, you have to learn to not take it personal. People just need an opportunity to feel like their voice has been heard, to voice their concerns, and to know that someone actively listened that truly had not made up their mind and was willing to listen to what they had to say before they make a decision.
Thank you. And Mr. Corey Williamson, you'll wrap it up for us.
Thank you. I think Rusty stated almost verbatim what I would say. So first of all, you know, conflict and tension comes with the territory and you can't take it personal. Ultimately, a decision has to be made and not everyone's going to be happy about that. As a school teacher, you know, you deal with parents and every parent has a different idea about how their kids should be educated in the classroom and how you as a teacher should run your classroom and educate their children. And again, Rusty, I couldn't agree more. In the situation with parents, they mostly just want to be heard. They want to understand what's going on and they want to be supportive. So if you can communicate that decision out in a way that they can understand, that's half the battle right there, even if they disagree with you. In my professional career, I managed content and curriculum for a worldwide program at Apple. I deal with people on every continent, and they don't always agree. So again, going back to, you have to listen, you got to take that input, you have to be transparent in the decision that's being made. You have to communicate that decision. And once the decision is made, you stick with it.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to the third question, and we'll start this one off with Mr. David Bailey. During the pandemic, what do you feel the district has done well and what could be improved upon?
During the pandemic, I think that as far as what they've done well and what could be improved upon, get my thoughts together real quick here. You know, I think that the board has done a good job of listening to all the parties on the issues at hand and struck some compromises. I think that when we saw the incredible difference in attitudes of parents and their motivations and understand those, and of the health department and of the governor's orders and local orders, and then of the teachers involved in it, all of those parties had incredibly different ideas on what was the right thing to do. And I think the board managed to come to a compromise that was as best we could get for the children during the time. And I know it was tough. And I think the other thing they did well is standing up to the criticism and really, quite frankly, the rudeness of people during the process. And I think that was great. I think there was some takes and saying that things could have been more transparent during that process as far as how they were making those decisions, how the board was. But again, it's hard to say that the reports on what the board was doing versus what the board was actually doing was represented fairly in any of the venues or forums that were out there during that time. But if I were to pick one that I thought appeared hard to just understand what the board was doing during that time, I think the outcome came as best we had, as best you could. We have quite a ways to go here, and hopefully it's in the direction of opening up and getting the kids back to school. We know all the negative effects and where we need to go with that. So hopefully that answers that.
Thank you. Ms. Liza Long, you're up next.
Thank you. First, I have to say what I think we're all thinking, that this board faced an absolutely unprecedented crisis. And I actually know a little bit about what that crisis looked like because I was an educator and I went on spring break and I did not come back from spring break. So I got to witness that with my own children through West Ada, as well as, you know, having to live that as an educator myself. The transition process was really, really tough. I will say I thought the board did an excellent job of really listening to all the stakeholders and wading through so much conflicting information and so many different needs and so many conflicting stakeholder viewpoints to really keep the focus on students. I really, as a West Ada parent, felt consistently that the board was making decisions with the students in mind. And that's part of the reason I applied for the board, because I really respect you for doing that during a situation that's just unprecedented. One thing I appreciated as an educator myself was that you did hit the pause button. I know a lot of people are like, oh, what about school? What about online school? But you understood the equity issues that were involved for students who maybe didn't have access to high-speed internet or to the technology. And so the thoughtfulness that went into making sure that all students had access to education, rolling out a virtual schoolhouse in really almost no time. And then listening to the teachers, I actually, the current system where teachers have that Monday prep day, I think is so valuable. As an educator myself who had to make the transition to online teaching very quickly, it's a different modality. It's the way you engage students is different, and giving teachers the support that they needed so that they could have that prep time, have the technology support that they needed. I felt that went very well. Things that maybe could be better. Well, I think transparency's come up, but again, that's more about communication than maybe necessarily the board's issues. So looking at transparent communication, I think, is an ongoing challenge.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Ruben Ortega.
Thank you again. So what has the board done well to deal with the pandemic is I think that they have not shied away from making some hard decisions, right? This is the reason why there are vacancies on the board. And this is the reason why there's been so much turmoil in the communities, because they've had to make those hard decisions, and it's caused some risks. I think that, like everybody has said, the chaos was overwhelming. Nobody knew exactly what the right answer was. There was a lot of different information, but I think the district has done well to navigate it, given their skill set and given what they started with. I think that the real reason I applied is because, as a Monday morning quarterback, we all hear what we could do better the next day, right? And so I'm not sure how much the board would like to hear that, but for me, my perspective is that when we talk about communication, I feel like the district does a great job of sending out a lot of information. But when we're talking about clear, concise information, I think there could be some improvements in how that's managed to make sure that not only are we not saying A on one day and B on the next day and then C on the third day. And even if there is a little less volume, but the quality is up, I think that could be something that we could improve as a district. In addition, I think that, as decisions are made and the outcome of those are questioned and people come out of the woodworks going, why'd you think of this? Or why are we doing X when we don't do Y? I think one thing that the board could do to really provide some validation for its choices is to stand by these decisions in a way that helps people understand that this was already thought about, that we did consider those. And the one thing the board or the district has done really well, though, is they've been flexible. You can't fault them for that. They see something, they want to change it. They've implemented the 1 through 5 full day attendance as a test run. And I think that was a wonderful thing for them to do. And I think that there are other things that we can be creative in to find solutions going forward. And that's what I focus on.
Thank you. Mr. David Benetti.
Mr. Benetti, your microphone is turned off.
How about there?
You're good.
Wonderful. So I think the board's finest hour is when you put out the plan, and then as the surge hit in the December timeframe, late November timeframe, you stuck to the plan. You stuck to what you said you were going to do. And I know that was not easy. And I know that other districts made other decisions, but as a parent and for somebody that was looking for consistency, that is what I appreciated the most. And I'm certain that was not easy. But that, in my mind, was the board's finest hour. I think in general, where it can be proved specifically with regard to COVID-19 is that I do think that there can be a little bit of a stronger emphasis on some of the other factors that we have to consider. Again, there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. Like, we can't fix this. We can only balance competing needs. And the impact to the students, I don't think was always given the full weight of that impact on them, social, emotionally, the decrease in learning, the hygienic principle, like my kid hasn't had a cold in a year. That actually scares me because they don't have another opportunity to build immunity to other diseases besides COVID-19. And so I think that sometimes we got a little bit myopic in saying, well, we're only going to look at this as the health perspective, and not to exclusion. Don't get me wrong. I do know that those other things were taken into consideration. But if I were to quibble, I'd like to see a greater emphasis on exactly what cost our students are bearing every day, the longer that we go on away from what we would consider a normal school environment. And that's something that I do hope will change in the future, that we really are always considering what are we trading off when we're making this decision. It's not just single focus.
Thank you. Ms. Wendy McKinney.
I bring a little different perspective to the situation because my two oldest graduated from Rocky after going through the other schools that they went to. And then my youngest, we saw right away when he was at Paramount Elementary that he would not survive 6th grade middle school. He needed to still be in elementary school for 6th grade. And it was a good decision, but that led us to Compass Charter. And so from the time my daughter graduated in May of 2019 until the pandemic really hit full force and we had to make decisions about what to do with this amazing child who's made great leaps and bounds, we came back to West Ada because of the decisions that you made. There are children out there struggling. There are special needs kids. There are low income families. There are 504 and IEPs that are not being met legally. But you took the time to look at the whole situation. You are true trustees for the children. That's the first thing you do. You are a trustee for the children. What is the best for the whole group? And there's gives and takes, like everyone has said. You used your expertise and your time and energy to evaluate it. And although we were unable to get a 504 for this child within West Ada in elementary school, we got one at Compass Charter. We came back, and we came back because he could go every other day. He saw very quickly he would not survive 1 week on, 1 week off. It wasn't going to happen. And the K through 5 being in school, that is the safest place for them to be. They're thriving, they're happy, don't change that. And let's get the kids back in school as soon as we can. When it comes through preschool, we need to jump into preschools perhaps. All ages are going to benefit from the changes we make for the better.
Thank you. I'm going to reread the question just one more time because I know we've gone through a round, but during the pandemic, what do you feel the district has done well and what could be improved upon? And Rusty Colfett, you're up next. Sorry.
Thank you. That's okay. Yeah, you were thrown into the middle of dealing with something that has never occurred before. And so there are always going to be lessons learned and things that we could do better. But I'll start with what you did first, and it's identified in your plan. You put the kids' safety first. That's our number one priority as trustees. So you put their safety first. Secondly, you identified that the priority was as soon as safely possible to get them back to in-person learning, because you recognize that doing things remotely from home, it has consequences also. So you recognize that. And then thirdly, you remained flexible as you developed and distributed your plan. We were learning new things literally daily related to the pandemic. And depending upon which social media platform you were looking at, people's opinions changed daily. And so you methodically used your subject matter experts, and you made the best decisions that you could at the time with the information you had, but you remained flexible enough to recognize that it was okay to change when appropriate. Areas that I think could be improved on is, and this is going to always be the case, is the communication. West Ada School District is a big organization, and it's very difficult to disseminate that information so that everybody gets it. Yes, there's stuff on the website, a lot of great information. Some people just don't go there. Yes, they can come to meetings, but even that's been difficult during this time. So figuring out a way to kind of bring that down to the lowest denominator, meeting in neighborhood groups, things like that to disseminate the information. I think that'll be a lesson learned for all government organizations that come out of this is, we have to figure out better how to simplify the information and get it out to the folks that are being impacted by it so that they know the why and they know what to expect.
Thank you. Mr. Corey Williamson?
Yeah, thank you. So I really appreciated as a parent the board getting the kids back to school as soon as they did. I also appreciated trying to provide an online option early on. I think that while that wasn't as important for my own kids, I did hear from the community that that was extremely important to members of our community who were very worried about the pandemic at the time and they needed that online option. So I appreciated that. I also appreciated the perspective of the teachers and the due diligence that the board did in listening to the teachers, because they, of course, are at much higher risk than the students. So as a parent, I want my kids in school, but as a former educator, I can certainly appreciate the risks that come with being in a classroom, and I would not want, as a teacher, a bunch of sick kids in my class. So just recognizing that was very difficult for the board. I appreciate the way that that was handled. I do think that consistency is extremely important. That consistency has to be communicated out in a way that is very clear and concise. I know a lot of times, we get emails, multiple emails during the day as parents, and it's hard to sort through, what's the latest as things are changing by the minute. And so if there's a way to maybe hit a pause button and get out more concise, clear communication, I think that would be a big win with the community. The technology was also a struggle. I know a lot of kids just could not get their machines to work. That's a huge challenge, and I recognize that. So, that's something that the board could come together and work on in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Kim Brown?
I think I'm on. I agree with everyone. There was a multitude of things to take care of and deal with, and I think you did an excellent job gathering as much information as you could to make the best decisions you could make for the various students and their needs and the other players for safety, and getting the educational goals met. And the technology was phenomenal, how quickly you were able to get it out. And even though my kids had a hard time getting it to work for, I think, over the first week, it was worthless. But it eventually got there, and you didn't give up. And I think the biggest important thing for me with my children was consistency. Once you finally got it, so they knew what to expect, they knew what they could handle or had hard times with, and we could deal with it. And so I really appreciated that. Also the food, that I understand the program you ran in the summer and during the year, and I thought that was amazing that you're able to do that so quickly. What to improve? I don't know if you could improve the communication any better, but I would get different emails in the same day saying, oh, we decided this, and then, oh, it changed. And I don't know if you can, because of the way the virus was and the situations were changing, and you had to make decisions when new information came along. But I know I could tell as a parent the district was trying hard to communicate, and that's why I would get multiple ones. But I would say try and streamline or fine-tune communication a little better, though I don't even know if that would be possible, to be absolutely honest with you. It's just a crazy situation. But no, I think you did a myriad of things wonderfully.
Thank you. We'll move on to question 4, and Ms. Liza Long, you'll kick us off on this question. Being able to build and maintain good relationships and work collaboratively with those who do not agree with you is crucial in this role. Please explain your position on the recall campaign, why you felt the way you did, and how you would approach maintaining relationships in a situation like that.
Oh boy. We'll just go right to that one. Yeah, the recall campaign was interesting to me. I have to think about how to phrase it. I first of all, I really respect individuals having an opinion. I think that's important. It's important for us to form an opinion and to share that opinion. I feel like if it's come to the place where we have a recall campaign, something got missed along the way. And I'd want to know really, what that was. So I don't really support that particular mechanism as the best option. I think, voters go to vote. We're being appointed here, but voters go to the polls, they educate themselves. You've all run your campaigns, and rather than going to the nuclear option, right? What could we have done in the interim, maybe differently to handle that particular situation? So my preference in that kind of situation is really to have, I guess, more cohesiveness. I'm thinking specifically about my time on the North Star Charter Board, right? We occasionally would disagree. We had disagreements because boards do. They do disagree. But we could always find some kind of collaborative statement or some kind of way that we could share something, right, to show that we were at least going to be united in putting our students first and in doing that. And it's just once you get to that stage, it's hard to see how you can retrieve those relationships, right? It's just such a tough question. I would certainly never want to be in the shoes of being recalled. I will say that. So one of my goals as a trustee would be to not be in that situation.
Thank you. Mr. Ruben Ortega, you're up next. And please, any of you, let me know if you need me to repeat the question.
Oh, I'll take a repeat. That'd be great.
Okay. Being able to build and maintain good relationships and work collaboratively with those who do not agree with you is crucial in this role. Please explain your position on the recall campaign, why you felt the way you did, and how you would approach maintaining relationships in a situation like that.
So initially, how I felt about the recall campaign. I actually love the mechanism that has been put in place for recall. I do think of it as a nuclear option. I do agree with Liza there that it is a big deal. And if you get to that point and you have to exercise it, something's gone totally off the radar. However, I think from the impact of this last one, it's clear that there were, the recall was dropped for a couple of other trustees because what they do, they met with these individuals and they listened to them and they learned from them. And I think that building and maintaining relationships, first of all, is the basis for everything we can do. I have a very firm belief that if we look at ourselves as the problem, 99.9% of the time, we're probably going to be right. And so when there's conflict that comes up, it's my fault. And I did something wrong. I didn't communicate clearly. I was stubborn. You can ask my wife. She also agrees with this. But ultimately, I think that as you're building these relationships and looking to navigate conflict on an interpersonal level, it's so much, you build bridges when you say, look, I know I didn't listen to you clearly, or I didn't hear what you had to say. Let me try again. And as long as we can build a relationship and start a foundation off where that opportunity is still given, a recall doesn't scare me, and I don't think it should scare the board. I think that mechanism's in place for when it's needed, and hopefully it's not needed as often as it's probably been used. But I think that it's our responsibility as leaders to take that ownership and to be able to work together regardless of the circumstance. And anyway, that's how I feel about it, and I hope that that makes sense and kind of answers the question.
Thank you. Mr. David Benetti, you're up next.
I think the recall as a structural process is always needed. I think it's an important check and balance. I personally did not support this recall effort because I thought the board was doing a fine job, so it wasn't something I personally supported. But I do think that when you are within a particular candidate's timeframe, it's an important perspective to have to get them to adjust if necessary. And if the people don't support it, then they won't support it. And so it's a self-correcting problem. But in terms of conflict resolution, I think the answer to me is quite simple. Don't take it personally. It's nothing personal. If somebody doesn't agree with the job that you're doing and they have the right to try to remove you and they're successful in that, then you say, okay, then there's a different perspective. That's what the people want. And I will say, okay, and accept that judgment. Now, boy, is that a lot easier said than done. Yeah, I get that. But I think that for the conflict resolution part, it's not personal. It's just people have different perspectives. And if, again, you understand and can even repeat their perspective to them and say, okay, I get you. And now we disagree. And if that's the course you want to take, fine. I don't actually consider it nuclear because you don't have to actually make it happen. If it's not actually convincing to the people, it won't be successful. But I do think as a check and balance, it's vitally important. And so that's even though I don't support this particular action, I do think that as a procedure, it's absolutely mandatory.
Thank you. Miss Wendy McKinney, you're up next.
I love that you call me Miss Wendy. That's what my students called me when I was teaching. Anyway, I have done a little bit of teaching here and there, just never had a full-time contract with the district. So I've been thinking about this quite a bit. And about a week ago, I drew this for you. I don't know if you can see it very well. So I believe that we have a tree, right? The K through 12 is the trunk of the tree. The board is kind of, well, the K through 12 is what just makes us all grow, right? The roots and everything. The board is the trunk. And then we have the 3 branches. And when anyone feels like they're sitting on the top of the tree and they're no longer a branch, there's a problem. So it wasn't just the recall, right? Which I did not support and had nothing to do with because I was at Compass Charter. But the district administration, the teachers, the parents, right? We have problems. And so we have to find a way so that all of the people feel like they're branches of the tree. And then when you turn it, you've got all of these support people. You've got, oh, it's upside down, sorry, communication gurus, mental health professionals and counselors, extended family, neighbors, municipalities, county officials, health experts, emergency personnel, legislators, community organizers, entertainment and recreational people, businesses, private and charter schools, higher education resources. We have everyone, and we need to choose the right ones. We should have a pediatrician advising us about what needs to happen in the schools for the kids. We should have a GP advising us who should help us with the teachers. We need to go to the professionals, count on them for their expertise, listen to them, and then move forward. And like everyone said, it's easier said than done. My husband and I were involved in the Linder Village development. It was hard, but we changed things.
Thank you. Rusty, you're up next.
Yes, I'll kind of approach this from 2 angles. Is, whenever you're in a position of leadership and you need to make difficult decisions that impact people where they live, literally their children, emotions will run high. Now you throw the pandemic on it and you just put gasoline on the fire. So it's a difficult situation. My feeling about a recall, the recall mechanism, as some of my colleagues said, as a structural device, I think is important. But recalls are rarely effective and they rarely work because that's part of the check and balance mechanism. It's a difficult thing to maneuver through the process, but it's an important component to have available for people if they believe that their elected officials are not representing their views. I think anytime something like that occurs, it's important for each leader individually to reflect and say, did I miss something here? Did I not communicate effectively? Could we have done better? I think that's just a natural, learning process that we can go through. And at the end of the day, if you approach the problem that these individuals are recalling you for, you utilize the best information and collectively you made the best decision in alignment with what your priorities are, the children's, then you can hold your head high. But I also think where these get complicated, it's important as a board to speak with one voice. When we kind of separate and people, members of a board start giving their own opinions, or they branch out on some of their own feelings, whether it's in a meeting or separately, that can create a fracture that can feed to some of these recall efforts. So I think it's also important that we speak with one voice.
Thank you. Mr. Corey Williamson, you're up next.
Yeah, I think, first of all, in this particular instance, I did not support a recall. I think these were extenuating circumstances. I think that emotions were really high. People were upset, they were angry, and it was not a justified response. However, I think that I appreciate the mechanism of recall. I think that there are times when that is critical to have that mechanism in place. In this particular instance, I don't believe it was warranted. While I don't agree with every decision that the board has made, I respect those decisions, and I would continue to do so as a board member. I think it's important that as a board member, you remember that you are not there to espouse all of your own views. You are a representative of the community in which you live, and I think that you have to represent that community. And if you get to the point where there's a recall, I think that's an indication that maybe you haven't represented that community in the way that they feel like they should be represented. And there's a lot of reasons why that might happen going forward. I think communication is, again, critical. When it comes right down to it, you just can't make everybody happy, but you really got to try to represent the community that you live in. And if you do that, it's the best you can do.
Thank you. Ms. Kim Brown.
Could you review the question one more time?
Absolutely. Being able to build and maintain good relationships and work collaboratively with those who do not agree with you is crucial in this role. Please explain your position on the recall campaign, why you felt the way you did, and how you would approach maintaining relationships in a situation like that.
Okay, thank you. On the recall campaign, I didn't think it was appropriate in this instance just because it was a pandemic and it was very unique, but I do support it throughout the institution. I think it's necessary and part. We all need to be held accountable and be able to communicate with each other, and that's how I build and maintain relationships with people who don't agree with me, is trying to have open, honest communication. I'm a straight shooter and I try and do it respectfully, and I think that respectfully is really important to include. And if I'm not understanding or responding, I try and be really open to hearing other people's perspectives on the issue, because I think we can all find that we have the common goal of what's best for kids, and we might not have the same idea of how to find out what's best for kids or execute what's best for kids. We definitely need to at least listen to each other, and I think that comes when someone feels like they're not being listened to. I can only just give an example, maybe. I've had to deal with a lot of really difficult situations and with people that don't disagree or have issues. I think one of the most difficult, I had 2 students in one of those alternative ed classes I had, and one older brother had killed the other kid's older brother. And you can imagine, every day they wanted to kill each other. And we had to have open communication. I talked to parents. I talked to the police. I talked to all sorts of people. I talked to the kids every day. But I finally had to get everybody, parents, kids, in a room and say, we have to move forward to the end goal. We all want the same goal. And together we've got to find this. And if I can't help you, then we need to find something else. And we did. And we were able to move forward, even in that horrible situation. So I think I can do with people that disagree.
Thank you. And last up, Mr. David Bailey.
All right, well, I got the wisdom of everybody else here, but I guess my take on it is fairly similar, is that, political office is political. And so, given the situation and the atmosphere, I didn't participate in any of the recall campaigns. I certainly watched them with great interest and saw who was involved and how it worked. I think it's an amazing, great process along with the rest of our political process. I also think that the recall campaign for the board of trustees had absolutely zero reflection on the board's actions. It would have been, didn't matter who was there or what decisions they made, you would have had a group big enough to start a recall campaign. And that's just the nature of the beast in this case. So I think it's great. Another perspective I would take on that, and probably goes to the maintaining relationships, is that there's two sides to this, and we've used the word leadership, in appointed and political positions, and in company positions with organizations. There's certainly a piece of leadership in there, but there's also a piece of a significant piece that we got to consider is service. And we're not leading people as much as we are providing service, especially to the students in any of these positions. And that's what real leadership is. That means that when you are criticized, then you got to take that and still make the right decisions in accordance with whatever your charter or whatever your job is. That's leadership. And I think the board did a great job of that. I mean, you didn't respond to that poorly. I don't think any of you took it personally. And, you got to get to the other end of this and I suppose see if you want to run for the board again at that end. And I guess to that take, I'll editorialize a little bit, probably have the question in mind as to whether, any of these candidates would run for the board for political office at the end of this. And I'd say probably that depends on whether you think you did a good job and whether they want somebody else in there in place of you. So.
Thank you. We'll do this fifth question, then we'll take a break after this round. So question number 5, Mr. Ruben Ortega, you're up first. And the question is this: one of the most important decisions a school board will make is hiring a superintendent. Please describe what you would be looking for in a superintendent candidate and why.
So I've actually given this quite a bit of thought. I have a number of connections in school districts throughout Washington State where we lived for a number of years before coming back home to Idaho, and called up my principal and vice principals and said, why don't you guys move to Eagle? I have a job for you over here. And my biggest factor in reaching out to them is that Eagle School District is the biggest school district in Idaho. It is unique, 40,000 students, and we deserve a superintendent who is high caliber, who is top of their class. We're looking for someone who he likes a challenge and can and is ready to do something dramatic and different. My feeling is that this search for a superintendent is only minimally more important than dealing with the massive growth that's occurring in West Ada School District. But I think that finding the right superintendent now will help solve that future problem that will be just as big for the board to face. I think that ultimately we find a candidate who not only has an understanding of what it is like to serve as a superintendent. I think experience is key, but also finding someone who understands the kind of people that are drawn here to the Treasure Valley. There's something about the people here and for my 4 children, I would be keenly interested in ensuring that they put them first and their success first. I think that pedigree and college and schooling those are probably not the top choices for me. I think we're looking for integrity. I think we're looking for leadership, and I think we're looking for someone who is willing to take the challenge and move from somewhere to here.
Thank you. Mr. David Benetti, you're up next.
Yeah, I mean, as a board, this is the central role, right? To find the persons that will serve in your operational context and provide operational oversight and corporate governance on them. So from my perspective, if we are really looking to have our students face the challenges of tomorrow, then we need to bring some new ideas to the table. And from my own perspective as an entrepreneur and as an innovator, I try to look at problems from a different perspective. And that can actually be very difficult, because when one comes from a situation where you've all gone to the same schools and you've all had the same degrees and you're an educator for a certain period of time and you were in the district for a particular period of time, then you're an assistant this for a particular period of time, you tend to develop a cadence about how you would approach a problem. And very often that means that any problem that you face, if you're a hammer, looks like a nail, right? And that isn't necessarily the right solution. So I think that from my own perspective, and it may be different, and it's not to denigrate or devalue that vital role that educators play in this process. My goodness, of course, we're talking about a school district. But I still would want to find a person that would really look at problems from a different perspective, and to be able to not necessarily view it from, well, this is the way that it's always been done, and so this is the way that I'm going to do it. And it reminds me of a quote by Admiral Grace Hopper, Rear Admiral Grace Hopper, who is a female programmer in the U.S. Navy, wrote the first compiler. She came up with the word bug because she found the bug in the Mark II computer at Harvard. And she said, many famous quotes, but the one that I think is my favorite of hers is, the most dangerous phrase in English language is, but we've always done it that way. And so in finding the superintendent candidate, I would want to find someone that really was able to convince me that they wouldn't necessarily fall back on that bromide when looking at the challenges that we face and preparing our students for tomorrow's challenges.
Thank you. Ms. Wendy McKinney?
I was part of a group of collaborative effort in a different school district that redid the Gifted and Talented program in 2007. And after we had chosen the way to go, we brought it forward to the board, and that very night they split the school district in half. We called it the Great Divorce, and it made the entire community real. This had been a school district that had thrived on excellence. Everyone, when I graduated in college, I wanted to be a teacher in this district, right? But I noticed over the next 5 years, as we tried to implement the plan, that the East Side district, won't name names here, chose to run their district as a business model. It failed. It disintegrated. We have to have an educator as a superintendent. Now, I like acronyms, so I wrote up a little acronym. S is for supporting current efforts of excellence. U is to understand and unite our community. We need someone who has the nerve of a Golda Meir and the tenacity of an Abraham Lincoln and the grace of a Queen Noir. This is going to be a hard person to find. P is professionals. We need to have someone who can see professionals as who they are, unless they're shown otherwise. Educators, staff, aides, volunteers. Our current superintendent knows the name of every single person. I spoke with an elementary school principal. He said, we are going to miss her so much. Not only us, the lunch ladies. She knows their names. She knows this community. E is for eradicating anger and confusion. We've all talked about communication tonight, so important. And R is reliability. We need to reliably move towards thriving and healthy children. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rusty?
Yes, thank you again. I like the Mr. Rusty. It's easier than trying to get the last name out there, so I appreciate it. I'm going to take a little different angle than my colleagues. Is obviously I want someone that is competent and skilled in their profession, that is a leader in their field. So when I say a leader in the field, they're recognized nationally. They're someone that is respected amongst their colleagues. So that's a given. I think that's going to be a requirement that all of us would agree on. I want it to be someone that has a passion for children. But to piggyback on that is I want it to be someone that has experience working in communities of growth and of similar size, so that they can bring that knowledge of funding for growth, planning for growth. They bring that expertise that they're not experiencing it for the first time. It's important for me, someone that we hire, is that they are willing and have a desire to be a mentor. It's always great if you can develop your staff so that when this superintendent chooses to leave, you have a natural succession plan. So it's important to me that this person values mentoring and mentorship and is willing to partner with their staff to help them get better. And to go right in line with that, someone that is a relationship builder. A few of the other folks here this evening have mentioned it has to be somebody that's community oriented. They have to be able to connect with the community, because a connection is what's going to develop trust, and the trust is what's going to get buy-in. So for me, yes, they need to be competent. They need to be a leader in their field, but they need to be about relationships. They need to be about mentoring and teaching and developing the next generation, and they need to have a passion for children.
Thank you. Mr. Corey Williamson.
So I do believe that a superintendent should have strong credentials, and I would want to see evidence of and a history of advocacy for technology and for teachers, specifically those two things, and I'll tell you why. So I think we've been seeing a shift in education for quite some time in this country. That shift is going to continue. The traditional classroom is not going to be able to persist much longer the way that it has. So technology, whether we like it or not, is going to play a vital part in our kids' education. So they have got to have an understanding of that technology, and they've got to advocate for it and get out of the traditional classroom. Advocating for teachers. I think it's a given that any superintendent in this country, for the most part, cares about kids. But I think they're not the ones in the classroom with the kids. The superintendent isn't. We need to get teachers in the classroom. Teachers care about kids. They interact with kids. If you have a superintendent that will invest in teachers, and I mean pay teachers and get the right teachers, we need better STEM teachers in this district. If we can get those teachers in the classroom, they'll take care of the kids. But we've got to have a superintendent that will advocate for those teachers.
Thank you. Ms. Kim Brown.
Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
Looking for a superintendent, I first of all want someone who loves kids and loves education and appreciates the magic that happens in the classroom with the teacher, and that popcorn experience is things hit and click in each child's mind on their own, and the special twinkling that isn't seen in the classroom. And I definitely want someone who has the credentials. I definitely want someone who is they don't have to be a master of technology, but appreciate it and be able to utilize the people and things that we have in this district to move it forward. I think we made great steps with this pandemic, and to utilize that and not just let it sit in the corner and gather dust. I think they need to be a Pied Piper kind of a person to lead not just the teachers and not just the children to success, but the parents, and help keep them involved in this. I see a lot of this in the advanced opportunities, trying to promote that more and help the students and parents get energized and excited about that. That's something that's real tangible. And that also includes getting teachers that can do that kind of a thing. They need to be a good team person. As a superintendent, they're too high up to do everything. So they've got to be good at utilizing the talents and skills of the people around them and helping promote and lead them for us to all get better in the future at helping these kids be prepared for success in this world.
Thank you. Mr. David Bailey.
Thank you. I was thinking that I got last. I would get some better answers to this, but I think they're covered up pretty well on through the set here. And of course, it's an incredibly important task that we need to go through in finding a new superintendent, and one that'll be up to the task as the previous one was. Certainly that time is going to run short to get that task done. And I do think we need a person who's a leader, who has the experience. I think the size of the school district is important, and that the issue of growth is absolutely important. I'm guessing we got a question on that later on here. But we're going to see some serious growth in the school district over the next couple of years. All the numbers really point to that, and that ability to hire the people, the staff that comes with that, the coordination and the school construction and new projects that are going to go on in the area. It's probably going to be one of the most consuming tasks of the new superintendent to get in that area. Hopefully we'll be through or be better at the COVID response. But I do fear that we will have, I guess I say I fear, but I think we just got to accept that the way that the school room operates in regards to technology is going to change over time. We've seen it happen in the colleges to a great degree already, and it's already gone into our high schools. My daughter is doing remote schooling online and going to graduate with her associate's degree. Super proud of all the kids who are doing that kind of work, thinking openly about those types of programs and making sure that our schools are prepared for that, and that we're preparing kids to go to colleges and to go on to their careers with that kind of experience as well. Of course, the relationship building and the community, the ideals of Idaho that we have in place are incredibly important as well. That we think differently here in a lot of ways than some other places.
Thank you, Miss Liza Long.
Wow. So I view this as the most important decision that the current board will have to make. And I think we need to find the leader who is currently leading the school district that we want to be in 10 years. Everyone's spoken about growth. Any of us living in Zone 4 know that growth is happening all around us. Unplanned growth will be really, really tough, as we've already seen, right? As we've seen our schools get crowded. This leader, I know that she or he exists. I think it needs to be a nationwide search to find the right person. I absolutely think that stellar educational experiences are critical. So having experience currently as a superintendent, I think would even be the level that we would want to look for. Working in a large district, managing growth, managing budget concerns, overseeing buildings. All of these things are great, though. The one thing that I'm really looking for in this person is leadership. And I mean a specific kind of leadership, and that is servant leadership. I think one of my colleagues mentioned this earlier about the ability to mentor, right? The district as a whole, if they feel inspired and motivated and empowered, who even knows what we could be capable of, what our teachers could be capable of, what our students could be capable of. Right now, we are not sending enough students on to college. We are not connecting enough students with careers. That's a problem, not just in West Ada, but across Idaho. We need the person who has that vision and who can inspire and empower our administrators and our teachers through servant leadership, which is kind of a flipping of the model. Not, I'm the leader, I have all the experience, I'm right, but I'm the leader. Let me share power, let me share ideas, let me collaborate, let me mentor, let me build this energy that inspires all of us and makes us all work toward the vision that I can share and communicate with you. So this leader should have a vision of where we are 10 years from now, and they should have a way to empower all of the stakeholders, from the classroom teacher up to all of our administrators.
Thank you. So at that, Troy and Sherry, or Mr. Stevens, Ms. Clerk Newbold, I'd like us to take a 5-minute break for the board and probably all the applicants. So if we could go on break until 7:30,
Perfect. Thank you.
live. And we are live.
Thank you. We'll get back to this interview process. I know it's been a long one already. So we've got 3 questions left, and we're going to start. We're on question number 6. We're going to start with David Benetti. I'm going to read off the question here. Can you support a board decision that you are not in favor of? Explain how you would manage this in your communications with the community, especially with those community members sharing your individual opinion.
Well, if you are not in support of a decision, you have to be very vocal at the board meeting itself, and you have to use the processes and procedures that are put forth in front of you. And then you have to make your strongest argument that you possibly can, understand everybody else's position, make sure you get all the information. But at the end of the day, if the board decides to go a different route, then you have to respect that. And that's just how a democracy works. It doesn't mean you always get your way, but it does mean that when you have reached a conclusion, you have to get behind that decision. If it goes beyond your morals, well, then you have a tougher decision, which is almost certainly that you need to resign. But barring that, then you have to understand that you are part of an organization that has a system and a set of processes in place, and you have to respect and honor that. And you have to have the faith that when the shoe is on the other foot, your colleagues on the board are going to do the same situation. And I've been in this position as a board member on some startup companies that I've been part of. There've been big, heavy debates, and the worst thing in the world that could possibly happen is somebody would leak to the press, and then just everything gets worse. So that's my perspective. You have to be vigorous. You have to be honest. You have to be direct. If it's too much, you probably should resign. But barring that, then you have to support the decision that was made because that's what you signed up for.
Thank you. Ms. Wendy McKinney?
Well, I've been married for over 20 years, and I'm the second of 8 kids, and I have more than 100 cousins. And when you still talk to each other after all those years, you have spent a lot of time in negotiations. And I think I learned a lot last night when I joined the Great Idaho Public Schools statewide convergence. And one of the things that they shared, I love learning and growing. And this is all just part of learning and growing, right? Sometimes I'm wrong. If I gather the information and I still disagree, then I have some more questions to ask. Because I feel like if we're all focused on helping the kids do their very best, then we are going to come to many of the same decisions. But one of the things they shared was that there's 4 kind of goals around meetings, and I love this. First of all, respecting all voices. Second of all, step up or step back. Sometimes someone's too vocal. Maybe someone is too quiet. That might be an indication that they don't agree. We need to bring out their ideas and bring out their thoughts so that we all participate. And then third, exploring differing opinions. If we do this, we can come to pretty much a consensus on almost everything because we have the same goals. And then the fourth is appreciate different cultural perspectives. So these 4 cornerstones of communication and connection with the IEA, priceless. I love it. We also have seen the Education Foundation has the 3 goals of academic success, safe and supportive schools, family and community engagement. So if we're all working together kind of with the same blueprint, we can come up with many of the same final results. It may be a short-term goal, a long-term goal, or a midterm goal. We might disagree on those things as far as timing, but if we're disagreeing on the what and the how, we need to keep asking questions.
Thank you. And Mr. Rusty?
Yes, I'm going to start by shamelessly mentioning a few of the boards that I have sat on the last 3 years, and I'm doing that only because I realized I forgot to mention it in question 1. So, but I currently sit on the Eagle Urban Renewal Board. I was the chairman of the Ada County Emergency Medical Services System Administrative Committee, and I was a trustee on the Idaho Independent Intergovernmental Authority Medical Trust. And in every one of those boards or committees, there were decisions that were made that I did not agree with, and vice versa. There were times when I was in the majority and my colleagues did not agree. But we had a vigorous, open, transparent debate, which I think is important because it ensures to the constituents that all the views, all the impacts are being explored. But at the end of the day, when the group makes a decision, each of us need to support that. And I've mentioned it before on one of my other answers that we need to speak with one voice. Where we lose the trust of the community or we lose the trust of our constituents is when they feel that we are divided. And it is never more important than at a time like this when people are fearful, they're uncertain, they're anxious. Decisions that we make have to be supported. And one element of your question was, how would you discuss it with constituents? Well, after decisions made, if I'm talking with constituents, I'm going to share the process and the why as to how we came to the decision. My personal feeling on it no longer matters on that. So when I share and discuss a specific decision that's made, I share the perspective that the board had, the why as to how we came to the decision, and that's what I would share with the constituents. I would not share my personal opinion after that.
Thank you. Mr. Corey Williamson?
So in answer to the question, could I support the decision if I disagreed with it? The answer is absolutely yes. So that's the short answer, with the exception of a situation where that decision was unethical or immoral. And then there would be a different course of action that would need to take place there. But that being said, when I went to work for Apple years ago, Steve Jobs used to talk about a rock tumbler. And his analogy was that all of us working at the company were in this rock tumbler, and you know, we had to get in there and fight for position. And it wasn't always pleasant. And the edges got smoothed off pretty quickly in the rock tumbler, but it made all of us better having those debates internally, and we had better products because of it. I think that's a great analogy for any board. You should appreciate the discussion, the differing viewpoints. You should hammer those out. You should not sit back and just go along. I think you need to be a strong person to build a case. You need to advocate for your position. But at the end of the day, you're on a board. If the decision is made, barring any moral or unethical prohibitions, you should just support that, and I would do that.
Thank you. Ms. Kim Brown?
I could definitely support a board decision that I don't agree with. Again, unless it went against my principles, and then I'd have to make a decision at that point. But in general, yes, and I think that's part of being a member of any group is you've got to be a straight shooter, open communication, make sure people understand why you believe one set of actions is better than another or a different plan. But then if your plan isn't chosen, you need to be a follower. And so I would need to be not just a follower, but I need to be a cheerleader to put that plan into success and, you know, have it have the greatest degree of success that I can help it with at that point. We all need to jump in behind and do what we can once we've narrowed it down. And in communicating with other people, I would communicate that same thing, that the discussion of what we should do is over. The plan's been decided. The discussion now is how can we help this be as successful as possible, since this is the route we feel is best for the children at this time.
Thank you. Mr. David Bailey?
Could I ask you to repeat the whole question again, please?
Yes. So can you support a board decision that you are not in favor of? Explain how you would manage this in your communications with the community, especially with those community members sharing your individual opinion.
Okay, so of course I've sat on a number of boards, and you know, public and appointed boards, and boards of corporations as well, and spent time as a naval officer as well. And of course, the decision of the board or of the group needs to be carried from there on out. And the discussion that takes place, the way the board comes to their decisions, is important in that process. And that back and forth, the incredible or the decision-making process requires they have that vote. They don't always come out even, but to carry that afterwards, an opposition to that would be one, a violation of the law under which we're the code that says that only the board can speak for the board, right? So you don't speak for the board, following a decision on that. As far as explaining that to constituency or to people, within the community, of course, you talk about all the issues that were brought to bear and you discuss all the opinions that were there and say that there were some that agreed with some pieces of this, but the decision is based on a weighing ideals against each other as opposed to taking a specific position within that. That's why we have the board from a variety of places, and the board should get input from the people and from the stakeholders before we do that. So of course you would do that and you would explain this was a decision of the board and here was why. I think I'm really good at explaining those things and being a team player when it comes to that stuff. Like I said, I'm a good listener and I can communicate well as well.
Thank you. Ms. Liza Long.
Thank you. The short answer for me is yes. And again, I think any of us who have board experience understand that that's part of being on a board, that the unity of the board speaking as a whole, far outweighs my investment in being right on any particular issue. Now, I will tell you, I definitely have opinions. So if I do have a different opinion and we're debating something, I'm going to come armed with my facts and my figures and everything that I can throw at that problem, and also my persuasive appeals to try to convince you that my position is the right one. But if I didn't persuade the board and the vote went against me, I've multiple times supported decisions of boards that have gone against what I personally thought was the right course of action. And I'm even willing to admit that I've been wrong. So I'm thinking of one particular board that I was on where we had a pretty serious situation where we needed to rethink our mission and vision. We just were not really clear on what our mission and vision was. And I thought our mission and vision should be one thing, and the rest of the board thought our mission and vision should be something else. And you know what? They were right. So I did make the best case that I could, and I was wrong. I think that groupthink is dangerous, and that's the reason we have individuals serve on a board, so that we can test each other's ideas and make sure that we're coming up with the best solution. And really, put those ideas to the test. But at the end of the day, when the board's decided, the board speaks as a whole voice. Again, this bars anything immoral or illegal. I will absolutely take a stand for things that I really believe are unethical or illegal. I would not agree with the board on that. But by the same token, I don't know that I would need to play that out in the community either. I feel like conversations that happen with the board need to stay with the board. And that's a good lesson to model for our students, for our community members, to say, sometimes we are going to disagree about things, but we can still come together and present a unified front. And we can all agree that we feel we want to do what's best for the students. So yeah, absolutely, I can say yes to things I disagree with.
Thank you. Mr. Ruben Ortega.
Thank you. Yeah. So one of the hallmarks of most of my board counseling falls into the scenario where the board has been divided on a number of key issues, and there's now hard feelings or a division or some sort of animosity that's starting to grow between the board members. And I think that the art of being disagreeable and disagreeing at the same time has been lost in our society. And I think that, could I support a decision that is not in line with my ideals? Of course I could. That's one of the roles of being on the board. But to support it is more than just simply to shut up and go along, right? It's to avoid going out of the community and throwing your fellow board members under the proverbial bus. And as we look at aspects of leadership and the highest principle and quality of leaders, the best ones are those that are humble, right? Those that can go, look, I was wrong, or maybe I didn't have a good perspective, or you know what, the vote went the other way, and now I need to support that. I think that, you know, how would I manage messaging this to the community? I think it's very clear that you know, a lot of the community doesn't understand the dynamics of a board, right? They understand what their kids need, they understand their families, and explaining things like fiduciary duties, right? Understanding that there are you know, give and take that's given in decisions that are made, understanding their why. Those are teaching moments. And at heart, I think being a teacher and being able to share a little bit of that light and knowledge with the community helps come a long way. I don't think this position that we're being put in is one of looking for political clout, but it's achieving some goal. And if you're moving toward that, I think that's what needs to be conveyed. And honestly, I think that ultimately a board can be poisoned if those hard feelings can't be put aside, and then they're ineffective, right? And so ultimately it's upon each board member to be humble enough to swallow their pride and move along as needed.
Thank you. So we'll start off on question number 7 with Miss Wendy McKinney, and I'm gonna, this is a short one. How will you contribute to building the trust of the community?
I started on the advisory board for the Paramount HOA about 5 years ago, and worked with Anne Marie and the builders and everyone as we moved forward with the finishing of the project. This is a huge project. It is a feather in the cap for Brighton Corporation. It is amazing, but the ponds were horrific. Many of the people that moved into the neighborhood moved in there for the ponds. This community ranges from millionaires to paupers. There's now a home in that neighborhood going for $1 million, but there were people who were bankrupt and lost their businesses and had to move. As a board member, we know about the intimate struggles of the people we're around. They have to trust us. Our responsibility is to help them have the same definitions and the same vocabulary that we have. Hand them a glossary, for goodness sake. Don't use acronyms around them, right? Our responsibility is to be trustees to the children. We need to walk and talk with children and with administrators. We need to be in the schools. We need to be in the community. We need to be going to the events. We need to be going to yoga with the person that we don't agree with, right? We have to be in the community, learning their stories, understanding them, and moving forward. And we need to remind ourselves who pays the check, right? The voters are paying the check. We need to understand how to improve the voters' knowledge, especially about funding. Oh my goodness, there's so few people that understand what happened in 2006 and how we completely lost 1/3 of our funding. People just don't understand this. The levies replaced that. We have to be able to teach and lead and guide, but most of all, listen and show that we're professionals. They'll treat us that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rusty?
Yes. The way that I would work towards building trust in the community is, first of all, I'd be professional. As I have my dealings on the board, whether they're at the board or I'm discussing this with a constituent, I'll present myself as a professional because I'm representing each of the other trustees as well as every member of the district. I'll listen to understand. So when we're in our meetings, whether they're a formal a session or perhaps we're talking to constituents, I will listen and try to understand what their points of view are, and then bring those points of views into the bigger group when we're talking at the trustee level in open board meetings, bring those views for discussion. I'll be an advocate for our teachers and for our students. I think it's important for the trustees to advocate for the staff and in turn advocate for our children. And then I'll be accountable. If I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it. If I say I'm going to bring something up to the trustees at a meeting, I'll bring something up to the trustees. I'll be accountable to the people that we are representing. And like one of the other colleagues said, I think it's important to be in the community. Sometimes, and I mentioned this before, when we're in a large district like this, you can become very detached. And so you need to kind of bring this back to the smaller community. And each of us represent a zone. We represent the district as a whole. But go to HOA meetings. Perhaps, I know a lot of the mayors now do these coffees with the mayor or things like that. Create an intimate environment where maybe people that can't attend the meetings or do things can still have an opportunity to talk to you face to face. Understanding that, and that goes towards that piece of being a listen to understand. So that's how I would approach gaining the trust of the community.
Thank you. Mr. Corey Williamson?
Yeah, I think first of all, you have to demonstrate the ability to listen. People have to know that they're being heard. They're not going to trust you if they don't think that they're being heard. Second, you need to demonstrate that you'll do what you say you're going to do. And Rusty alluded to this as well. If you say one thing and do another, you've lost the confidence of those people that are putting their trust in you. So you have to be consistent in keeping that trust through consistency in your actions. I think you also have to demonstrate transparency. If there's any perception that things are being done behind closed doors that shouldn't be done behind closed doors, that's going to be a problem. That's a trust issue. And you want to, as a board member, as a board, you want to promote that transparency. And finally, communication. So I've said it before, you just cannot overestimate the value of good communication. It engenders trust. People want to know what's going on, and if they feel like they know what's going on, that's going to build more trust.
Thank you. Ms. Kim Brown?
I think how to build trust, you need to be open, honest, straight shooter. You need to listen intently and be very respectful, whether you agree or disagree with whatever is being brought up, the issues that are going on. And I need to keep what's best for kids number one in my goals and actions and the things that I promote. And I think that's it, short and sweet.
Thank you. Mr. David Bailey?
Yeah, on the transparency issue is top of my list. The idea of providing that perception of impropriety is just as bad as the impropriety itself. And again, as I said earlier, in today's climate and social media, and anybody gets to say what they want, which they should. That's hard to control that. So it's paramount that the transparency is at the top of the list, that everything's out for inspection for folks, regardless of what anybody claims. Communication and communicating what they do out there. Reliance on fulfilling our duties. So we say, these are the duties of the board. These are the things that we need to do, and communicate that to people and say, this action or whatever was taken by the board is in support of this specific duty. We know people have opinions, but this is the best way we could come up with this specific duty. Results for the students. So if we have results for the students, we're getting the students back to school, we're providing good education, we're increasing the value and of the time they have in class. We got better teachers. We got our school scores coming up, STEM increasing in that area. That's a huge trust issue that we're just performing, right? It's results make that happen. They were accountable for what we do, and then the big picture is listening and talking, or communicating, I guess, in that way. And so we should look specifically at how the board takes the communication in, how we report what facts we've gotten from all the stakeholders, and then communicating the decisions that were made that were based on those facts and based on the other input that we got on there. So. Back to transparency again is the final end of the circle.
Thank you. Ms. Liza Long?
This is a really important question, isn't it? And to my mind, it ties back to a question that you asked earlier, the one about the recall effort. So we have some interesting information. We know that there are trust issues. We know that, and I think everyone who applied knows that. With that knowledge, we also know that trust, once broken, is very, very difficult to regain. And I think that the best way to regain and build trust within the community is to be trustworthy. And my colleagues have already outlined multiple ways to do that and show that. It's not just about saying, you can trust me. It's about showing up. It's about doing the work. It's about being consistent and accountable. It's about being transparent and clear in your communications. It's communicating the why of difficult decisions. And frankly, I'm here because I do trust the board. That's why I applied. I trust the board. I trust that the board has had our students' best interests in mind throughout, as I mentioned earlier, incredibly challenging situation. I think any of us who want to say we could have done better are just armchair quarterbacking, frankly. But we have to reestablish trust. It's essential. Another way that I would work to build trust in the community is what another of our colleagues talked about, building those individual relationships, right? So getting to know Zone 4, getting to know what people think. And I did actually reach out to a lot of my Zone 4 friends before even thinking about applying to say, what are some of the issues that you want to see addressed? So, finding out what people need, what their needs are, listening to them, being authentic, genuine, accountable. But then also, really, one thing that would really help to establish and rebuild trust would be to hire that amazing superintendent who's going to take us to where we want to be 10 years from now. So, as delivering that kind of inspiration and vision, I think would really go a long way to rebuilding trust. And I don't think the COVID situation will last forever. Yeah, I guess the short answer is act with integrity, and that's something I strive to do in every aspect of my life.
Thank you. Mr. Ruben Ortega?
Yeah, so as I sat here and listened to all the answers being taken, I wondered what I would say to add to this. It's been wonderful to hear. I grew up with a mother who was a high school dropout, and my father was an illegal immigrant. He immigrated from Mexico, and I grew up in a community that there was a division between the Hispanics and the Americans. And just to be fully transparent, I used to tell my dad that I was half English and half human, because he always referred to himself as an illegal alien, and I didn't understand the context. But what it allowed me to do in that naivety is it allowed me to be in the community and to be in both communities, and to spend the time that takes to build trust with people that had lost. This is something that I've learned from my childhood, that when trust is given, it is received. And I think that it's clear that the people of this district trust the board, and we can return that trust by fulfilling our obligations. I think that one of the things that is paramount is to be brutally honest with our constituents, and that involves the transparency and the integrity. I think everyone understands when they interact with somebody, whether they're looking to put a feather in their cap or looking to put on a face or a facade, or whether they're really here because they care. And I think that shines through, and that's reciprocated again. Third and final thing that I thought about is just the time, right? This is the precious time that we all have. We could either spend it with our families, or we can spend it on a Zoom meeting with these wonderful people, right? And why do we do that? Because we care. And giving the time that's needed to not only attend the board meetings, follow through, go to the community meetings, giving that time will be reciprocated by them giving us the time to spend. I truly believe that.
Thank you. Mr. David Benetti?
Yeah, I think you got to make the first step. I mean, trust comes when somebody else puts themselves in an uncomfortable position and says, okay, I'm asking for your trust. So I've always put my personal cell phone on my website for the past 10 years, and people always thought I was nuts for doing that. But that's, you're going to get a lot of calls, a lot of crazy calls, but you're also saying, look, if you're going to take the time to reach out and call me, I want to make that easy on you, and I'm going to put myself out there. And so that sort of demonstrates that you're worthy of trust when you're willing to take a chance like that. And something I thought specifically that I would do in this particular instance is that at least at the beginning, were I to be selected, I would have an hour-long open Zoom or Teams office hours, essentially. Just introduce myself and say, okay, I'm here, I'm available for an hour. And yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are going to come and be very vitriolic, or a lot of people will be welcoming, a lot of people will be everything in between. And putting yourself out there and saying, yeah, for an hour, every day, at least in the beginning. Maybe it comes down to a week. No, maybe nobody cares and you stop doing it eventually. But saying, look, I'm willing to put myself out there so that we can have that open discussion, so that we can have those conversations, so that I can present myself to you and take a chance. So I'm going to take a chance on you, and I hope that that will show that you can take a chance on me. And so that's one thing that very specifically I do to help engender trust.
Thank you. Miss Wendy McKinney? Oh, sorry. We were on the, sorry. Got to the end of that one. We were on question number 8, so the last question. And I want to just set the stage on this one. One of the number one questions that board members have gotten recently, given this is a volunteer position, it's not paid, it's been a tough pandemic. The number one question that many of us get these days is, why do you want to be a board member? So we're going to wrap up with that question. Why do you want to be a Westdata school board member? And we'll start off with Rusty.
Well, thank you. And you know, I know this is the last question, so just thank everybody for their participation, for the trustees. I know it's been a long evening for you, so just to be involved is an honor. So why do I want to be a trustee? Well, I've spent all of my adult working life in public service, whether it be with the fire department, whether it be teaching at the community college, whether it being small groups at church with my kids when they were growing up, or coaching. So I believe there is no greater thing that we can do than to give back to our community. I've been blessed. My family's been blessed. So that's kind of why I'm stepping forward. I'm at a point in my life where I retired here in April of last year. And so I have the time now to commit to something that I believe I have skills that I can bring to the table that collectively can help the trustees make the best decisions possible on behalf of the people that we serve, the students and the parents. I enjoy being involved in my community. I enjoy meeting new people. I understand that there may be conflict that comes with this at times, but that's just one of those things that comes along with the privilege of serving others. And so I'm just excited about serving my community. That's part of why I got on the Urban Renewal Board. And when I saw this opportunity come about, you know, I thought it'd be a privilege to be involved and work along some great people who, kudos to you for giving us a path and a roadmap for uncharted territory that no one has ever had to deal with. You know, I'd be honored to be part of that team and help take this district to the next level with the growth. So thank you for allowing me to participate.
Thank you. Mr. Corey Williamson?
Yeah, I feel like I could just say exactly what Rusty said. He said it so well. I do want to just add, or I should say reiterate, you know, the very first question that I answered as in this interview process was about giving back to the community. So I grew up in Idaho. I am an Idaho boy through and through. This community has given my family a lot. So I think the number one reason why I'm interested is I genuinely want to be able to give something back. Now, that being said, I love education. I'm a former educator. I thoroughly enjoyed my time in public education. I have kids in the public education system. I have a vested interest to see this district succeed. I want my kids to succeed in the district. I believe in public schools. I want to see public schools work. Not everybody has the means to send their kids to private school. We have to make public schools work, and I want to be part of that. I also think I bring some valuable skills. I mean, I've been an educator. I've been in business. I have dealt with conflict. I've been on boards. I really believe that as a representative of the common person, the middle ground person here in our community, a moderate voice, that I have something to contribute to the board. And lastly, I just want to say thanks. Don't want this time to get away from me without saying thanks to the current board and the time that you've given us tonight to express ourselves and have this opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kim Brown?
I want to start off by saying thank you for giving us each the opportunity. It's nice to see the quality of other candidates. I will feel good for the children regardless of who we get. Why I want to do it is I care. And I think I have the knowledge and the experience and the enthusiasm to help make a positive difference, not just for my children or the school that my kids are in or the programs that they like, but for more children and other projects. And I think this is a good way to serve, and I'm retired and trying to find a good way to still be a positive influence in my community. And this came along and I thought it would be the perfect fit. And like I said, the biggest reason is I care.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. David Bailey?
Thank you. Again, I'd like to reiterate the same sentiment here. You know, I think you'll do well, whoever you pick on this board. You've done a great job of getting picked for your board. You're getting a great group here. And I think we're kind of going to share the same sentiment as that you know, we all have a duty to serve. We've all got different experience coming to that conclusion. It's what we do. You know, I've served in the military for about 13 years and really enjoyed that time. And then I've served in the private sector at various levels within Idaho for about 27 years now, and just really enjoyed seeing the place grow up. You know, I've been in and around the schools. I've designed schools. I've helped, you know, get sites for schools. I've been in and around the education program, and of course I have kids in school now. I am interested in it. I'm interested in the success of our children in the school district. I think I bring a lot to bear when it comes to that, as far as my organization experience in organizational management, my experience in conflict resolution and in conflicting situations. As board, you know, I was chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission for several years out of a 2-3 year terms. Within that end of it, I understand the public meeting law. I think I'm just well qualified to be on the board and to handle the duties, you know, that are associated with that. I think I have the character to do that, and I think I have the ability to talk to people from all the stakeholder groups, whether it be the board itself or the teachers, students, and the parents involved in that as well. I think it'll be a lot of work. I'm not retired, but I've never committed myself to something that I didn't put the time and take to do the best job I could at it. And I feel a duty to give back to the community, as I have on every opportunity I've had in the past.
Thank you. Ms. Liza Long?
Wow. So I guess I'm going to have to come clean here. When I first saw the Zone 4 opening, I thought to myself, wow, somebody is really going to be brave and step up and do that, because I'd watched what the current board has gone through, and I thought, I don't know why anyone would sign up for that. And so I'm actually, excuse me if I'm wiping my eyes, I'm a little teary because 23 people stood up from our community. So I honestly applied because I thought of the phrase, if not now, when? If not me, then who? And it's so gratifying to see that so many people felt the same way. I felt the same call, the duty to serve. I'm a West Ada mom at heart, but I'm an educator. I've got a doctorate in organizational leadership. I've got board experience. I checked a lot of boxes for this service opportunity. And I think I do bring in that unique aspect of having quite a bit of experience with mental health advocacy, and also with dual credit and with knowing about the path to moving on for our students. It's something I'm so passionate about. I really think COVID we're going to get it. We're going to get through it. And so it's an exciting time to be able to join the board, because the person who gets this position, first of all, I know it's going to be a great person. I feel so wonderful about that. But secondly, we know that that person's going to have a real opportunity to shape the future of education for our kids and to continue the excellent things that are happening with West Ada, but then to become so much more. I am honestly so excited to see how we emerge over the next 10 years of growth in our community and how we maintain leadership status with our high schools, sending more and more of our students on to college. And I feel really honored to be here with all of you and to have shared in this conversation tonight and hear all of these great ideas. But really when it comes down to it, the reason I want to serve on this board is because I really care about our kids and I'm passionate about education. I've been a lifelong educator. I know that that's how I will end my career. So I really appreciate the opportunity tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ruben Ortega?
Thank you. Yeah, I think my wife asked me this question 3 or 4 times as we discussed this process, and I am truly convinced that our system, for some reason, doesn't incentivize the right people to step forward, whether it's the scrutiny that we'll face or the time that is being asked of those that have the skills to take away from their own family time or whatever it might be. I feel like that I have been blessed, to be honest, in a situation where I not only have the training, the experience, but the time as well to be able to give as flexible in my practice has made me. I am just excited to be able to finally be able to employ my skills in a way that I think will make a difference. I saw this opportunity come up, and I knew that selfishly for my kids' sake, if I did not throw my hat in the ring, how could I expect them to do great things or to raise the bar or to be uncomfortable? I know that over this last year, not only did we have COVID, which was tough and amazing and crazy and hard on everyone, but the political discourse and the division of this country has spread into even our community. And I knew that there was an opportunity to create some unity, to build some bridges, and to help people grow out of this in a way that maybe they didn't know they needed to. And so for me, that opportunity was impassable, no matter the cost it would bear on myself. That's really why I wanted to serve, to be grateful for the things that I've been given. And so in that attitude, I'm grateful, like everyone else here, for the time and the energy. And I hope that as the board contemplates their decision tonight, that they look for someone who fulfills all the things that they need and want, and that will do everything that they've said they will do tonight. And I hope that could be me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. David Benetti?
Yeah, so I'm also going to admit that the primary reason that I originally looked at this is because I want all the kids from K through 12 back in school in person full time. And I'm not ashamed to admit that. And if there's something that I could do to help make that happen quicker than it's happening now, then that was a primary motivation for me getting involved in the first place. But I will say that I do have a longer term impact and vision as well. And that's one that I'd like to include some technical literacy as just sort of baseline understanding to prepare our students for the challenges of tomorrow by giving them some literacy in the technologies they're going to use tomorrow, thinking differently. With my technology background, that was something I thought that I could help contribute from my particular perspective. And just thinking about the problems differently. That is always a useful, in boards that I've served on, to have somebody that's a thinking differently, not the same type of individual, not the same type of thought process, not the same answers to the same problems, that we could view things from a different lens, and that you're likely going to be wrong most of those times. And you have to be comfortable with that. But I think that there's always an important value in looking at things differently and saying, okay, are we really considering everything that's possible? And so that's in particular when I said, I think that that's something that I can bring that's unique and it's different, and that the board may find valuable. And so if that is something that is what we're looking for, to view these problems in a different context, and be willing to say, okay, well, we tried that, and we'll try something else, then that's what I'm hoping to accomplish.
Thank you. And last, Miss Wendy McKinney.
This has been a wonderful evening. I have just thoroughly enjoyed it. I bring 5 things to the table. First of all, I think like a kid. This morning, I woke up and I was just thinking about horses. And I'm like, okay, what kind of horse am I today? And I turned to something I don't know that I've ever read before, just turned right open Sir Walter Scott Ivanhoe, page 352. And I read how Rowena just found out that her hero, Ivanhoe, was safe. She turned to Sir Robin Locksley, Robin Hood, and bowed to him. And here she is in these flowing gowns, right? And she's just so beautiful. And then this De Bracy grabs her reins and he's like being mean to her and he's like, forgive me. And she's like, get away from me. And so Sir Cedric comes up and says, leave her alone. And I'm thinking through this whole scene and I'm thinking, who do I want to be? I'm like, I want to be the horse. Because I can sit there, I can watch it, I can see the whole thing play out, and then I can get home and I get my oats, I get my rub down, I get to be with other horses. A volunteer position is like this. You have to be able to be the horse that you need to be. You need to either be the type of horse that is described as meek. I don't know if you know this, but the Greek word for meek is praus, P-R-A-U-S. And praus describes the horse that's been trained by a Greek warrior to go into battle. Meekness is not weakness. Meekness is strength. It's being friendly. It's being vigorous when you need to be vigorous. And you have a certain heritage. I have that heritage. All 4 of my grandparents graduated from college. They were born from 09 to 16. They made that happen. My grandfather served in the legislature from Eastern Idaho. My other grandfather was in every single Albertsons board meeting that ever happened. F. Elmer Fouts. Hope to be like him someday.
Thank you very much. So before we move off of this discussion item, I have a couple things I just want to let the candidates know. And then having been a trustee and not the chair at the past round of this, I also want to open it up to the other trustees just to say their thanks or have any comments that they'd like to make for you all to hear. First of all, you all are going to have made this a very tough choice for us. So you've all brought good energy, good, unique answers, and really a lot of diversity, and we appreciate that. It's a tough choice is a good choice for us. One of the challenges of this process is it's sort of very invigorating to go through the interview, and then we go into the action portion and we make a motion, and then it's sort of over. And so before we get into that portion, I wanted to just say thank you. I wanted to open it up to the other trustees, and I also wanted to at least kind of try and end it on this point with a good note, so that when we get into that action, you walk away feeling good, even if we don't hear anything from the board after that. With that being said, I'll open it up to any of the other trustees who, if they want to say something before we move into the action item. All right. Everybody's quiet.
This is Trustee Ozuna.
Trustee Ozuna.
You said that well. And I'm glad you hit on that a little bit, because you're right. Once we get into the action portion, things just kind of end really quickly. And so I'd also like to say thank you to all of you. I think that we are in really good shape. We have a lot of great decisions that we could make here, and it's going to be really tough. Chairwoman, I would ask if we could have maybe a couple minutes, though, before we go into action, just to kind of reflect on some answers. Choices are going to be hard here.
Okay.
If you'd give some consideration to that. Thank you.
We can do that. Before we do that, I'll check and see if Trustee Buffy or Trustee Klopfenstein want to say anything.
Chairman Johnson, thank you very much. And I have to admit, I just want to say thank you very much for everyone and the time they've spent. It's wonderful this evening, and frankly, hearing the banter between everybody during the pause was very fun. I have to admit also that the depth of experience that's coming for us is just humbling, and what you guys have to offer us is stability and really a focus back on the kids. And I so appreciate that. And COVID has been difficult. You're right. It's been very difficult. But we have good board now, and we'll be having even a better board later. So just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you. Trustee Buffy, just want to give you an opportunity if you want it.
Yes, thank you. I also would like to thank all of the applicants. There was such diversity and such professionals. I had such a difficult time going through the applications, and I work in HR and I'm over recruitment, and this is something that I do on a regular basis, but this was extremely difficult, but also very exciting because I know that no matter what motion passes, it's going to be a great appointment. So I just want to say thank you to everyone in the process.
Thank you. Clerk Newbold and Mr. Stevens, just to help give trustees a minute to evaluate all that they've heard tonight, why don't we take another 5-minute recess, and well, I'm going to make it 6 minutes just to make it an even number, and we'll reconvene at 8:30.
Okay, thank you.
And we are live.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We will now move into board agenda item F, and we'll go into agenda item number 1, appointment of a candidate for the vacant seat in Zone 4. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Trustee Buffy.
I believe this motion or this appointment demands someone really well vetted in community service, specifically around managing growth and strategic planning. So I would move that we appoint Mr. Rusty to the Zone 4 vacancy.
Thank you. Trustee Buffy, do I have a second?
I would be happy to second that.
Thank you. Motion made by Trustee Buffy and seconded by Trustee Kloppenstein. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. The motion carries 4-0. And now I'm going to have to learn how to say Mr. Kolfat's last name better. Congratulations, and thank you all for your time tonight. And we will reach out and get you oriented and onto the board, and we will have you sworn in at the next board meeting, which is January 26th at, I believe, Clerk Noble, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 p.m.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll, I'm going to ask for all those who are candidates, if you will go ahead, you can turn off your videos at this point and mute your microphones. We appreciate your time. We do have one other action item on our agenda tonight, and that is, sorry, I'm flipping some pages, is the boundary committee to consider the boundary committee recommendations for Owyhee High School, South Elementary and North Elementary schools. Do I have a motion?
Chairwoman Johnson, this is Trustee Ozuna.
Trustee Ozuna.
I would move that we approve the boundary committee recommendations made and presented by the committee.
Thank you, Trustee Ozuna. Is there a second? In this case, the chair will second the motion for discussion.
Chair, sorry, actually, I was going to jump on, but you're welcome to as well. I apologize.
No, Trustee Kloppenstein, you go ahead.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. And I do appreciate the time. I just wanted to kind of bring up a few viewpoints. Some parents had reached out to me, and there's a number of concerns, I think, in the South Meridian area. But I did want to just say some perspectives, if that's okay. One, I thought that the committee did a wonderful job. I thought the way that they had done this was very thoughtful, professional, and considering we had, a lot of change in this round, I thought the way that they handled not just the problem that we gave them, but also really some of the parent concerns, I thought was very valuable. So I just want to say I totally back the way the committee had supported this. Some of the parents had given me basically three concerns. One was that many wanted to keep the boundaries as is until other elementary schools were added south of the freeway. So I just wanted to pay tribute really to their concerns. And one of the things that, what they're basically saying here is that they would like to have the elementaries kind of stay as is. We've been challenged, and unfortunately, with extremely high growth within the South Meridian area. We're also trying to bring in a new school into the traditional boundary system. And so I just don't see how we could keep the boundaries as is without having schools being either extremely overpacked in the South Meridian area or extremely under-resourced in the North Meridian area. it's just, unfortunately, it's a very difficult problem, partly because of the growth we have, probably also because of the lack of funds we have. So this is definitely a challenge. It's something that I've been given lots of thought to, but it's just something, unfortunately, I still have to support the current measure. The second thing they asked was that they wanted to send their kids instead to Siena or Hillsdale. The history of this board dealing with the challenges and watching the challenges over the past several years with Hillsdale and also with Siena, it's been heartbreaking. And those schools, especially Siena, with their, they've taken a lot of the burden, along with Hillsdale, for the number of kids in that school. A lot of these measures are trying to bring down those that population so that we can have a more equitable education. And so I still believe that the program that we're trying to offer tonight is bringing the quality of education back. Finally, also, and this is more maybe also a help to some of the parents we're very concerned about tonight, about open enrollment over at Mary McPherson. And I believe we already have open enrollment really throughout the entire district. So if there are parents concerned, then that might be an area where they could redress some of their concerns, possibly to have their kids stay. I would hope, however, that they consider Peregrine or Chaparral and really look at those areas, those schools. My kids actually went to Chaparral. It's a wonderful school. I walk there actually every other day. It's a very giving community. And Peregrine, I've walked those halls. The teachers are the epitome of professional, and the principal in that school is excellent. So I hope that if there are concerns about the schools, that the parents would please consider visiting the schools and just understand maybe the quality that is there. It's very high end. So anyway, I just want to explain why I'm voting for approving this measure, and I just wanted to make sure that was very clear. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Trustee Kloppenstein, for all of your explanation. It's really good. Is there any other discussion?
Trustee Johnson?
Yes.
This is the clerk. I just want to clarify, you made the second, was that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
It is rare, but wanted to have the discussion. So is there any other discussion?
This is Trustee Buffy.
Trustee Buffy?
The majority of the feedback that I received from the impacted families really was directly related to the timing of the implementation, and I really sympathized with that just because this has been such a tough year on a lot of the kids. So I do struggle with that, but I also understand the need for the reason, the project scope of why this has to happen now. I feel that the proposals, they do comply with the policy, and even though I'm still struggling with things, they do comply with the policy, and so I will support them. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? I want to thank the board for voicing why they would support the motion. I think it's really important for our public to hear that, and so I appreciate what you said, and I also echo what you said. So thank you very much. With that, we will call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 And the chair votes aye. The motion carries 4-0. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Trustee Kloppenstein and seconded by Trustee Ozuna. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0. We're adjourned. See you next week.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.